It was one of those mornings where you don't expect anything out of the ordinary. You know the kind. The alarm goes off at 6:30, you slap it into silence, and you go through the motions. Shower, shirt, tie, the smell of coffee drifting from the kitchen, like an unspoken promise that the day would be manageable. I even remember thinking, as I buttoned my cuffs, that I might actually get home early for once. That thought didn't age well. The drive to work was uneventful. Just the usual string of red lights, and the same old guy walking his golden retriever past the bakery on the corner. I parked in my usual spot, 2 spaces from the end, where the line of maple trees casts just enough shade to keep the car cool by the afternoon. I didn't know I'd never park there again. When I walked into the building, the smell hit me first. Burnt toast from the break room. Frank from accounting. Strikes again. The familiar hum of the printers echoed from the copy room, that low mechanical sigh that had been the background music of my career for the past 8 years. It's strange. You notice those sounds when you know you're about to lose them. But in that moment, I didn't have a clue. People were chatting casually in the hallway. Someone laughed. That easy, midweek kind of laugh that says, "Nothing bad is happening today." I nodded to a few coworkers, balancing my coffee and laptop, completely unaware that my name was already on the chopping block. I slid into my office chair, the leather creaking in that familiar way, and opened my inbox. That's when I saw it. Subject. Line. Board meeting. Urgent attendance required. No context. No agenda. Just a meeting invite from the CEO's assistant. And here's the thing. I wasn't usually called into board meetings unless it was something good. I was the fixer. The guy they called when they wanted numbers, spun into gold or problems, dressed up as solutions. So I didn't panic. Not yet. Instead, I took another sip of coffee, letting the warmth slide down my throat. I figured maybe it was about the quarterly report, or some last-minute pitch, if only I knew. I stared at the email a little longer than I should have. Not because of the words. There weren't many, but because of the tone. You can tell a lot from a subject. Line, and this one wasn't an invitation. It was a summons. Still, I tried to convince myself it was nothing. Maybe they needed clarification on a project. Maybe someone on the board wanted a quick update before a big investor call. I've been in that room plenty of times before, but here's the thing. Every other time, I knew why I was going in. This time, didn't. And that small detail had already started gnawing at me. I grabbed my notebook, not because I thought I'd need it, but because walking into a boardroom, empty-handed, makes you feel naked. The hallway to the meeting room felt longer than usual. The hum of the air conditioning was louder. Even the carpet seemed to muffle my footsteps in a way that made me more aware of them. When I pushed open the boardroom door, the first thing I noticed was the silence. Not the normal, polite, quiet before a meeting starts. No, this was the heavy kind. The kind that makes you wonder if you've just interrupted something you weren't supposed to hear. They were all there, the full board, lined up like a row of portraits. Their faces were too still. I couldn't tell if they were bored, tired, or waiting for something. And then my eyes landed on him, the CEO, leaning back in his chair, arms crossed, that faint smirk that didn't quite reach his eyes. I'd seen that look before. Usually it was reserved for competitors he didn't take seriously, or employees he was about to tear apart in a performance review. For half a second, my stomach dropped. Did I mess something up? I mentally ran through. The past week, the quarterly numbers were fine. The client presentation had gone well. I hadn't missed any deadlines, no angry emails, no complaints, nothing. So I pushed the thought aside, sat down at the far end of the table, smiled, pretended. I wasn't suddenly aware of my own breathing. The CEO leaned forward, resting his elbows on the table. His voice was calm, but there was something underneath it, that almost imperceptible sharpness. Like a glass about to crack. "Glad you could make it," he said. And in that moment, I knew. Whatever this was, it wasn't good. The CEO didn't waste any time. No warm-up, no context, no easing into it. He leaned forward, locked eyes with me, and said, almost casually, "We've decided to let you go. It's just like that. No, thank you for your years of work. No discussion about why. Just a verbal guillotine drop in the middle of a room full of people who suddenly found their pens very interesting. I felt my chest tighten. But before I could even process the words, he kept going. And frankly, he said, with that smirk still plastered on his face, I think we all know why. This company needs results, not whatever it is you've been doing. Laughter not from everyone, just two board members. The kind who always laughed when he laughed. The corporate hyenas. The sound hit me harder than the words. It's strange what your brain does in moments like that. My ears were ringing, but at the same time, I could hear everything. The soft click of someone's pen, the air conditioning vent rattling, the faint scrape of a chair as someone shifted uncomfortably. I kept my face still. I don't know how, but I did. My hands, though, I could feel them trembling under the table, hidden behind the notepad. I was suddenly gripping too tightly. Then he went further. You've been coasting for months, he said, and frankly, I'm embarrassed it took us this long to address. Maybe you'll find somewhere else that appreciates. Mediocrity. The words were sharper than knives and meant to be. He wasn't just firing me, he was performing. For the board. For himself. For the satisfaction of watching someone's reputation snap in half under the weight of a room's silence. I glanced around. Some avoided my eyes. Others looked down, as if fascinated by the wood grain of the table. Not one of them spoke up. I wanted to defend myself, to remind them of the late nights, the weekends sacrificed. The contract saved because I worked until my eyes burned. But I didn't. Not yet, because in the middle of the humiliation, something strange happened, something I didn't expect. A calmness settled over me. Not the kind that comes from peace, but the kind that comes from knowing you're about to do something that will change the room. And I decided, if he wanted an audience, he was about to get one. While he sat there smirking, I found my mind drifting, not away from the moment, but back through the years that led me to it. I remembered my first day at this company, walking in with a pressed shirt, shiny shoes, and a folder full of ideas I thought could change the world. Back then, I believed in what we were building. I believed in him. The CEO wasn't just a boss then. He was a leader, someone I thought I could learn from. I remembered the late nights, the ones where the cleaning crew would give me that look that said, "You should be home by now." My dinner would be a bag of chips from the vending machine. My phone would buzz with texts from friends asking where I was, but I'd ignore them because just one more spreadsheet always turned into 3 more hours. Then there were the weekends. Family events I missed because I was too critical to the project to take a day off. My niece's first birthday gone. My father's retirement party caught the last 15 minutes because I was stuck on a call fixing a crisis that wasn't even mine to solve. And every time the CEO made a bad call, a risky investment, a disastrous hiring decision, a deal that should have never been signed, I was there, not just to clean up the mess, but to defend it. I'd go into meetings with clients, smoothing over what he broke, rewriting numbers so they looked less like losses and more like strategic setbacks. I thought loyalty mattered. I thought if you gave everything, that it came back to you in some way. It's not always immediately, but someday, when the chips were down, they'd remember. And I'll be honest, part of me wore that sacrifice like a badge. It's embarrassing to admit now, but I thought being the one they leaned on made me indispensable. Like I was carved into the foundation of the place, untouchable. Yet here I was, my loyalty repaid with public humiliation. 8 years gone in 8 sentences. As my mind came back to the present, my jaw tightened. He was still talking, still trying to paint me as the problem. I knew better. And now, so would they. There's a moment right after the blow lands where most people either crumble or walk away. I didn't either. After his last jab, the room went still. The kind of stillness where you can hear your own pulse in your ears. But mine wasn't racing anymore, oddly enough. It was slowing down. I wasn't shaking now. I wasn't embarrassed. I was calm, the kind of calm you feel when you're standing on the edge of something big and dangerous, and you've already decided to jump. I looked at him, really looked at him, the smug tilt of his chin, the half smile like he'd already forgotten I was a person and not just a name on his payroll. And I thought, you think you've won? That's when the decision landed. I wasn't going to leave quietly if he wanted an audience for my humiliation. He was about to get an audience for his reckoning. I replayed conversations in my head, the ones I'd kept to myself. The phone calls he didn't know I overheard. The documents I'd kept copies of, just in case. All the late nights where I'd stumbled across things I wasn't supposed to see, financial reports that didn't add up, emails that should have never been sent from a company account, backroom promises made to people who definitely weren't shareholders. It was all still in my head. It was all still in my reach. I closed my notebook slowly, almost casually, like I was accepting my fate. But inside, I was flipping a switch. And when I opened my mouth next, it wouldn't be to defend myself. It would be to pull the first thread. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. Before I go, I said, maybe I should clear something up. He leaned back, that smirk still there, as if he was indulging me. Fine. Let him. I started small. A mention of the Henderson account. The one he'd claimed was a strategic success in last quarter's report. I reminded the board how the deal had actually gone through at a loss, buried in miscellaneous operational expenses. One of the board members, Evelyn, the one who never spoke unless she had to, tilted her head just slightly.
Ow.
But I saw it. She remembered, then I brought up the last minute. Supplier change from 6 months ago, the one that supposedly streamlined operations. I asked if they knew the supplier happened to be run by his college roommate, and that the costs had quietly doubled since the switch. The smirk started fading, not all at once, but like paint peeling in slow motion. I could feel the shift in the air, subtle but real. Pen stopped moving. Eyes stopped darting away from me. A couple of the board members were now looking at him. Of course, I said, keeping my tone even, we all know business is about taking risks. But sometimes, those risks aren't exactly. For the benefit of the shareholders, I didn't look at my notes. I didn't need to. Years of working in his shadow had given me a mental archive of his missteps and worse. I reminded them about the trip to Singapore, billed as an international expansion strategy meeting. The one where no meeting had actually taken place. The one where he spent 3 days at a private resort, paid for by the company, that got a reaction. Evelyn's pen froze midair. Another board member coughed into his hand, looking anywhere but at the CEO. He was still leaning back, but his jaw was tighter now. His smile wasn't so easy, and I wasn't finished. It started with one question. Not to me, to him. Is that true? Evelyn asked, her voice sharper than I'd ever heard it. She didn't look at me. She didn't need to. Her eyes were locked on the CEO like a spotlight, and the rest of the room followed her lead. He tried to laugh it off, some weak line about misinterpretations and creative accounting, but the sound fell flat. Nobody laughed with him this time. Then another voice joined in. What about the supplier contract? Why weren't we informed of the cost increase? And then another. And the Singapore trip? Do you have documentation of any meetings? It was like watching dominoes tip, one by one, each question knocking him further off balance. I didn't have to say a word now. I just sat back, hands folded on the table. Watching the shift happen in real time, his face had gone pale. Not the pale of embarrassment, the pale of someone who's realizing the ground under their feet isn't as solid as they thought. I could feel my heart beating, but it wasn't from panic anymore. It was from something else. That strange mix of adrenaline and absolute control. Like I was holding the strings and simply letting them unravel. He tried to redirect the conversation back to me. She's just bitter, he said, gesturing in my direction. Can't trust, but Evelyn cut him off. We can verify everything, she said. No one argued. That was the moment I knew I'd already won. I could have stopped there. Let the questions keep circling him until they wore him down. But I had one last card to play. The one thing that would end this conversation for good. I leaned forward, elbows on the table. My voice stayed calm, almost conversational. There's one more thing, I said. Something you might want to see. I slid a folder from my bag, one I'd kept for months, tucked away for just in case. It landed on the table with a soft thud that somehow cut through the hum of the air conditioning. Inside were copies of wire transfers from a company, accounts straight into a private trust in the CEO's name, set up in the Cayman Islands. Dates lined up perfectly with the supplier contract change, the one I'd mentioned earlier. Every inflated payment, every miscellaneous expense that had gone unaccounted for, traced right back to him. I didn't narrate it. I didn't need to. The board members flipped through the pages themselves. Each turn of paper sounded louder than it should have, like the room had gone deaf to everything else. When Evelyn finally looked up, she didn't look at me. She looked straight at him. His face had gone rigid, like he was trying to hold it together with sheer willpower. But his eyes gave him away wide, unfocused, calculating an exit that wasn't there. No one said a word. The silence was heavy, pressing down on all of us. You could feel the weight of it in your chest. And for the first time since I'd walked into that room, he wasn't in control anymore. No one tried to stop me. Not the CEO, not the board, not even the ones who'd laughed at his jokes just 10 minutes earlier. I stood up slowly, sliding my chair back so the legs made that low scrape against the floor. It wasn't loud, but in that room, in that silence, it sounded deliberate. I gathered my notebook, my pen. The folder was no longer mine to carry. Evelyn had placed her hand on it like she was staking a claim. Fine by me. No tears. No shaking. Just a quiet certainty that whatever came next, it wouldn't be here. As I reached the door, I let my hand rest on the polished wood for a second longer than necessary. Not sentiment, just acknowledgement. 8 years of my life had been behind that door. 8 years I'd never get back. When I stepped into the hallway, the air felt different, lighter, like someone had cracked a window in a room that had been shut too long. I walked past the reception desk without looking back, past the framed team. Excellence photos on the wall, my own face in a couple of them, smiling like I'd believed it all. By the time I reached the lobby, the tension in my shoulders had eased. My footsteps echoed on the marble floor, a slow, steady rhythm that felt like my own private victory march. Outside, the sunlight hit me full in the face. Warm, unfiltered. I took a deep breath, and for the first time in years it felt like I was breathing air that was actually mine. Some mornings, I still wake up at the same time I used to for that job. Habit, I guess. But now, instead of rushing into the same four walls, I pour my coffee slow, take it out onto the balcony, and let the city wake up around me. It's strange I thought losing that job would wreck me. I thought the title, the paycheck, the so-called prestige was what gave me stability. Turns out none of it mattered as much as being able to look at myself in the mirror and know I hadn't let him walk over me. I'm far from the boardroom now. No more whispered alliances, no more knife-sharp smiles that pretended to be friendly. My work is my own, my pace is my own, and the only politics I navigate are whether to work from my desk or the cafe down the street. What I did that day didn't undo the years I gave that place, but it made sure the truth was heard, not just for me, but for everyone still stuck in his shadow. And here's the thing. I don't think about him much anymore, but on the rare occasion I do. I don't feel anger, just a quiet pride. I walked out with my dignity intact. He'll never be able to say the same.